I don't have a twin brother. This poem is called The New Republic. I'm sharing the bathtub with my twin brother when news of the New Republic comes parading down the stairs. The shadows of 6 trumpets mark their puppets on our walls, and then the vanity gives way, and it falls into the sink. My twin brother stands to power on the radio. The New Republic's name is not pronounceable to us, the precise young soprano at the microphone explains. The Emperor is asking to be left his wingback chairs. His 11 wives will pack shopping bags to vanish down the naming conventions of American charities. My twin brother understands the birth year of republics. He once loved a woman who taught the social sciences. The urge to buy shares in certain firms assails him, so he covers his nakedness and jumps a downtown bus. I can sense my extremities conspiring to prune. I call and quit my job. I splash the bath mat. I tune in. The dripping of our faucet keeps time with the crowds, chanting in a country that is dreaming of me. I'm going to do 2 poems. They're for men who were alive when I started writing the poem and have passed away since. So they're kind of accidental eulogies. Unlike eulogies, they in no way reflect the actual life of the person discussed. The first one is about Roger Ebert, the film critic. The short intro would be that Roger Ebert had a number of sort of lives. He was a short story writer for a while and tried to make a go of it, and then he wrote screenplays, and then obviously was very famous as a film critic, and then got sick and became kind of a political commentator in his last years. So he has a variegated time on the earth. And the epigraph to this is from a screenplay that he wrote for the movie Beyond the Valley of the Dolls. And he hosted a sort of do-it-yourself film festival for like the last 10 years of his life called Ebert Fest. And the year after he had to go away and get his whole jaw amputated, he came back with sort of a fake jaw that looked kind of uncanny and drew a lot of sort of shocked responses from the audience on this. He sort of showed up on this big screen TV at the front, and he was holding up a sign because he couldn't talk anymore, and the sign that he was holding up is this quote, which is also the epigraph for the poem. "It's my happening, and it freaks me out." Excerpts from the future memoirs of Roger Ebert. I was born with more than what I needed. I watched films for 40 years and was fattened in Chicago. I wrote down my thoughts. My thoughts had thumbs. I had a taste for vodka. This disinhibited me. I leaned out an office window and was caked in inhibitions. I lost my best friend. I don't know where he went. I grew famous. The spit in my cheeks turned to poison and my jaw grew tiny lumps. I shaved them smooth and promised to never speak again. I became a political mystic. I shook a tall man's hand and he pocketed my fingers. I moved to drier climates and wrote recipes on tanks. I jumped a barricade, but my feet stayed buoyed to the concrete. I took a job making up the names of foreign leaders. I rolled out of bed. All the skin stayed folded in the sheets. I developed a new theory of photography. I adopted a child. The only meat he would eat was the flesh on my back. I asked my wife to draw my bath. The bath dissolved my bones and sucked them down the drain. I became an author of whimsical children's novellas. One day I blew away into the ocean. Amoeba mated in my hair. I ceased to exist. I anthologized myself. In the very early 1960s, a recently renamed Muhammad Ali was scheduled to fight Sonny Liston in Boston. At the last second, they lost their license and had to do it in Lewiston, Maine, which is a very small town near the border. And they did not do it in television. And it's infamous for possibly being thrown by Sonny Liston. He went down very early on a questionable contact. And that famous photo of Ali where he's sort of taunting over Liston is from this fight. So it's an infamous title fight. This is a sort of an alternate history poem where it's infamous for another reason. Ali kills Liston. You no longer belong to Louisville or Lewis. You are Lewistons. By this well-spoken phantom hand, your name has been commanded out of Kinshasa. Your chains of feather boas boiled into sugar drink to be sold at border outlets to impatient local kids. It gets worse than this in shanty towns. In untested rural Georgia, a farmer fires off his rifle. Your effigy rope-a-dopes a moment, then explodes. 3,000 witnesses walk the chalk perimeter, make untelevised appeals to the harvest gods of Maine. Nothing becomes of Nathan Hare. Nixon's list drains of enemies. Humphrey beats Nixon. Kales kills Allison. Dukakis kills the rapist. It surprises us with snow for all of 1988. Harding kills Kerrigan. McSorley kills Brashear. The cell they move you to is flooded, so you hang from their ceiling. Tyson kills Holyfield. You are approached by no biographers. America goes metric. Orderlies arrive to find you burning fight cards. So the title of the book is weird. It's named after a poem. And I have a 2-year-old. And I wrote this shortly after he was born as an attempt to offer advice. And when you have a 2-year-old now, so it'd be a kid born in 2014 or so, or really any time in this period, for a number of reasons, environmental and political and economic, you need to sort of think of advice that will fit and be applicable both for a future that seems like a continuation of the present or a continuation of the past that makes sense sort of chronologically, and for a future that doesn't make sense, that is a product of a break of one kind or another. And there's not a lot of advice that fits for both of those things. So the poem is an attempt to grapple with that. It's in little snippets, like short little asides. There's 7 of them. And it's called Don't Be Interesting. 1. My friends are sculpting down the major works of tiny cannons. My friends are working on translations. Like your 12-page board book adaptation of Moby Dick, the book and I are saying, don't be interesting. Be bifurcated, tied. Go fog your rover self into looped repudiations, non-belief, anonymity, and art. That's your people. The book says that people are art. 2. I'm from Toronto, incidentally, as an intro for this. I'm so sorry for this city. It will force your mind, push you grumbling right-angled into might and jurisdiction. Know that you were born in Yorkville, and this cannot be changed. Dogs were trained to know your voice and how to find your face in crowds. 3. When the man sings of you, he means Jesus. But when I sing of you, I mean you. Take my love songs seriously in spite of me. For when I sing of you, I mean you. 4. Ossington Avenue, 2015. The semiotics of the beard is in disarray. I can't keep pace enough to spot myself in photographs. Just don't hate things off their volley. Choose the neutral good. Set yourself equal to everything you see. Fantasize in numbers, statistic sets bored or grown organically within you, and whatever you do, don't be interesting. Set yourself as anything but interesting. The pure plays, though heard you too, will spike the brow but leave you winless, so wet your Russian lips for teething. Take your time. 5. The evidence is piling up. I may have gotten drunk and joined the Liberal Party of Canada. And the New Yorker magazines we swaddled you in were incorrect on Palestine. But you can be the Palestine you wish to see in the world. 6. Your father's copy of modern historiography, borrowed from Spadina Library and not returned, runs out of underlines on page 43. From here on, we are both alone. And 7. There can be no gentle easing into spectacle, and a gender-neutral youth will not protect you. But still we seek an audit of explainable angles, selfishness, scorecards, story, and sense. After that, it's just the heavy breathing of our heathen set, molded gelatin and pea coats the team of us. It is dusk as I write this. The neighbor kids head out for a picnic, banging lids. No, I found this comforting, that style is enough, if you love the world enough. Coveters with rhythm sections waltz to Christy Pitts. My mother-in-law writes and illustrates children's books. The specialization of labor. The kids who learn Latin are learning to count cards. Those who knew to count cards by learning what the cards meant are financing new countries. The financiers you read about in Fourth Day Stories are phosphorescent actors. The glowing girls died and were reborn. The pageant Jesus angled west in search of retail margins unheard of in the East. The West itself went wester, learned a language too rooted in its accent to repeat. The map makers shamed are begging for my change. The sons of single mothers sulk atonally. The psychologists are shouting. The men who shot up cinemas now portray themselves in tourist reenactments. Listen, the wardrobe women learn to swallow fire. The fire pits around which we first met are the paint in the tubes your mother uses for my portraits. Hi. Thanks for coming and being here. I'm just going to do 2 more. Thank you to Deanna for inviting me. Deanna is one of my favorite poets in the country, so it's exciting to have her invitation. Thank you to David. You were really great. I really enjoyed the reading, and everyone from the open mic and everything. I identified this poem with Ottawa because it was first published in Arc magazine a few years ago. The Boy Scout movement started at the turn of the last century, and for the purposes of the poem, it's important to know that it was 4 or 5 degrees more openly militaristic than it is now for the first 20 years or so of its existence. So much so that it's considered by a lot of historians as being responsible for the speed of social militarization more broadly leading up to World War I. And the founder of all this, Lord Baden-Powell, who was the founder of the Boy Scouts right after the end of World War I, he was very depressed because he felt responsible for inspiring World War I, essentially, among that generation of young men. And in 1918, he got very, very sick and broke into a hallucinatory fever where he saw reams of recently deceased young men descend upon him for revenge. And he broke out of it eventually and made some changes to the organization. And this part of his official biography is usually not told, and you can't find it unless you sort of look. But it happened. So this is in his voice. It's called The Fever Dreamer. I have made the boys, Baden boys, Britannia boys, I have made them cruel and handsome, made them march in single file, back straight, up on their haunches like new carnivores. I have taught the boys to take the waste from their lives, to cure their spit-clean trousers of mange and leg and mittens. I've had my boys go post-European and sew their pockets shut. I have beaten boys. I have whipped their heads with eyebrows. I have singed their shirts and broken out the laxatives. I have proctored international made and been remade by boy. I have told the boys I want them. I want them for king and kaiser, want them Lusitania and Sinosaurus tensions, want them cradle of statecraft and Metternichs and mobs, want armament contracts for accommodating fathers, mothers who would pack mule pamphlets into bedrooms, the boyish yes of Oxford Press printing in 3 weeks why we are at war. I have become the boys' sincerity, their sweated out details. I have boxed the boys, bent them at their waists and wound their backs for marching. If you scratch my surface, I will be the boys' defense. I'll settle their wounds with the good news of field dress. I will wear them hats. I will tie them heads to handkerchiefs. You'll taste how I have egged them on, how I fed the boys provisions. In those first provocations of Union Hall and Field, I showed them the fruitful economy of hunters, bought them the blades for first shaves. With the saccharine blood of their comeuppance, I have calmed them. I've told them to suckle on the nearest teat to tongue. I have left them to tend to these friendships in dark habitats. The boys, as boys, descend on repertoires of bravery. I know I bring it up again, but look at what they're wearing. Observe the benevolent cotton at their necklines, their badges and banners torqued into hieroglyph. Boy at swim, boy at camp, boy against the outline of the nation that protects him, boy using arrow, boys embraced around a flame. I apologize to Europe for the invention of the boy. I did not design them to be tyrants or marauders. I didn't dream them up to die. I demanded of my boys that they drift in mythic packs, wicked on the scent of antagonist or sibling. I regret that climactic lifting of the fence, my appeal that they factor in the fattened hearts of kings. I have brokered boys, bankrolled their littleness and lust. I've erected border towns between and inside them, built hives in their minds free from history. Cornered in this keyhole nightmare of Brittany, I've engendered all the boys as brood and as bereavement. Call me Piper, boogeyman, but it is true I made the boys. I have made the boys bewildering. Thanks again for having me, guys. I'm going to do the last poem in the book. It's about what are officially known as mixed-use sporting facilities. Any civic auditorium or outdoor space that's supposed to play host to baseball and football and soccer and all these things. There's a number that sort of come and go here. The two key ones in my head are the old Tiger Stadium in Detroit and the Big O in Montreal. But maybe you have your own. Elegy for the Outdoor Coliseum. For her coiled public, the mass weddings and tattoos and the parades that ended in the infield. For the masked accountants painted blue, for expansion teams. For the naked men and women who set out like houseflies, all hair and heightened instincts, to gamble with disclaimers of paid duty cops, who were tackled and were never seen again. For the time we watched Crusher beat the last stand of the working class by half a car's length, and the announcer warned us to stay away from soccer. For fan conventions. For the couples who fucked in the bathroom stalls of fan conventions and crawled out marked with one another's makeup. For the dancing reverends with their wives, the sponsors with their naming rights, the .com long dead but its logo still stickered to the balustrade, tagged like a bested tyrant's face. For hybridity, the dream of a renewable surface. For the field turf that burnt at any friction or peeled itself off you like a wetsuit underfoot. For the day they sold the team, so we kidnapped the owner, tied him to the mound for a common prosecution. For that picture in the paper where he's forced to wear a hat. For the contest last year where you had to write an essay, and the winner's team would get her dormant lighting for a night. The city's park snowplows rolled away to let them play. And a child ballerina wrote the chosen essay. And even though it rained, she took the stage in center field, her troop mates tripping up the stairs in stocking feet, for their mothers spread on blankets drinking wine. And in the pause before Brahms' first concerto, for those girls, like a music box, our power grid would fail to support. Thank you very much.